ensure that all those persons are attended to in accordance with that provision. I'm sure currently in the respective areas, statements of poll, where possible, where counts have been concluded, are probably en route toward the respective, whether deputy supernumerary returning officers or to the returning officers of the respective district. If you check on GCOM's website, that statements of poll gallery is already live. And so as those statements are delivered, you as well as the members of the public can access that gallery from very comfort of their home and examine those. Kindly state your name and the media house you represent, and we'll take no more than 2 questions per person at a time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Straightfish. I think it's more you and the chief elections officer, even the deputy elections officer, keep talking about this rigorous process to probably avoid voting impersonation and so forth. And I want to specifically take you to what you mentioned about the wrongful removal from the list, specifically dead persons. What if, just if G compliance that the dead are voted?
Travis, we've addressed that particular issue at length. Again, I want to take to the safeguards that we have in place. Operationally, we've done our part, and while these are allegations, again, GCOM does not have that investigative authority, but we've done what has been mandated of us to ensure that we have those legal procedures followed and implemented at the place of poll. Thomas.
Marcel Thomas, the Sherwin. You spoke about the 9 pickups that you had today, but I didn't hear address that the website had crashed, and this has been a problem throughout the day. Your GCOM officers themselves were frustrated at some of the polling stations. GCOM had given an assurance that it can handle the website traffic, and it was asked this morning, what happened? That's one. And recommendations for the provision of services for disabled persons were made since 2020. Today we had complaints, and we saw firsthand some persons could not access polling places, some persons with disabilities. Again, what happened? That's my question.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thomas. I will start with the latter, and of course, rightfully so, to really apologize to the members of the disability community. I'm very cognizant that this is an issue that we continue to face. But again, what we are required to do, legally in the operationalization or the placement of electors to polling stations within their respective divisions and subdivisions. And so in such a case, it mandates that unfortunately sometimes members of the disability community may be placed at a polling station that unavoidably does not have provisions such as ramps for them to access. What we've done is to ensure that we ask presiding officers as much as possible to offer the kind of assistance necessary to help those persons to cast their ballot. In relation to your first question, I'm fully aware of the issue of the up and down period of the website, particularly the query tool for the Finding Your Polling Station app. While we've experienced those issues, I think that our IT team was working on that round the clock to ensure that they put the necessary fixes in place and ensure that the system was live, up and running within the shortest possible time. We have continuously, throughout the day, and even now that we have launched that SOP gallery portal on our website, continue to ensure that we reassess and continue to monitor that website closely to avoid any possible such occurrence during the course of the night.
Marshall, resource, an issue of power outages. We're seeing reports of power outages in various regions. Could you say how many polling stations have been affected by power outage and what are the implications for such? Marcel asked about disability, we haven't asked that, but we also received reports today about missing balance, balance being wrong, balance being sent to polling station. I think Montrose was among communities listed. Could you address that? Is that true or not? And if so, what could have led to that?
All right, thank you very much for those questions, Svetlana. As it relates to the power outage situation, up to the time when I commenced this press briefing, I had not received such reports. However, what I can say is that we have put backup systems in place to address that. In addition to that, for the purpose of the count, we have provided all polling stations with solar lamps to facilitate that process. But in the cases where at the offices of the returning officers and supernumerary returning officers, there are backup systems in place to ensure that that upload and scanning process of those SOPs continue uninterrupted. I think your second question had to do with a mix-up of ballots at Montrose. I am not aware of the issue, but for me, once the ballot has not been issued and it has been recognized at the respective polling station, then I believe that it will not have any implication on the process. Right. I don't think it would ideally affect the polling station in relation to a shortage of ballots. There are provisions in place to address any such occurrence, but we've not received any such report. So as at this point, I believe that it's safe to say that it proceeded very well at that location you refer to, even though we've not received that kind of report.
Can you shed some light on this purposeful incident? Did you get a report of what she comes out with?
So we have not received through the official channel a report. I have seen the circulation of a video on social media in relation to an incident at the Safai Primary School. It is a matter that I will not want to address at this point in time without having all the facts in place. I'm sure at one of our follow-up press conferences, when we have further details on that matter, we will be able to adequately address
You
it.
refer to an incident, there appear to be several incidents at that polling place. The one you referred to that is circulating, and also latest something about how long the poll when there was announced between the same parties. Some claim that persons were being offered contracts at the polling place, and others claiming that APN agents were frustrating the process.
Mhm.
And APN agents claiming that people were offering contracts to voters.
Right. Well, again, Abina, we have not officially received those reports from our team, and therefore I would not want to prematurely offer any comment on such a matter without having all the details on that. At the follow-up press conference, I'm sure we'll have some more details for you in relation to that.
There's more than revenues. I know you cannot be able to give us a figure, but can you say based on what you've heard from your colleagues, what's been the vote turnout like in terms of whether it was steady, slow, or regular construction is appropriate? And secondly, can you say why no proper testing was done of the current tools and why the crash of the website? This probably could have been avoided some expense with the level of testing and the purchasing of the necessary capacity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gibral. I like to deal with numbers. And so to prematurely tell you about turnout will be really a hit and miss. Our observation, what might work for you may not work for us, but from a GCOM standpoint, as the electoral management body, I prefer for us to look at numbers before we make such an announcement on turnout. As it relates to the query tool, I see present with us in the room this evening, we have the Information Technology Advisor from the UNDP, who has been offering support to GCOM in relation to its IT needs. And we've done a considerable amount of testing on the portal. And even now, as I mentioned, we continue to ensure that we monitor it closely. I think in the IT world, once some of these systems are crowded at a particular time, we may very well experience this kind of hiccup. And hence, that's why we've been urging persons way in advance to ensure that they use that tool to check their polling station. Again, it is unfortunate, but I think the work that was done by our technical team to ensure throughout the day that that did not remain for a long period is commendable, and that they've been able to quickly resolve those matters.
I'm going to take you back to the inability of some people who are differently able to talk. And I'm saying this because there was a polling station where I saw this first time. You spoke about the resigning office being the person who would have been able to handle such things properly. It did not happen, at least like two incidents where I saw what happened. In fact, it seemed as though people were looking for higher authority to commit them to allow these differently able people to vote. That's one. Would you comment on that? What is the process employed there? And at my polling station, the polls open pretty
fact, the gate to the outer building was opened at 6:20. At 6:30, two of the polling booths were ready and working, but the rest of them did not operate on time or did not um, effectively open just after, let's say, the opening of the gate. And you did have people waiting there. But on the other hand, you did not have the time back, which I knew was in place for late opening when poll stations open late. There's a time back that is given to the voters. I know you're going to tell me about people being in the line at the close of poll, but I saw at least two people going into that specific polling station and being told that they closed at 5:55.
Thank you so much for bringing that to our attention, Ms. Johnson. Let me address the first issue again as it relates to dealing with persons with disabilities. GCOM has continuously been engaging I think it's the National Commission on Persons with Disabilities. And of course, we continue to receive recommendations in that regard. One of the issues that we face there, Julia, is the fact that these things, a lot of what may be required, needs legislation. And outside of that, we may not be able to implement some of those recommendations. Again, it's quite unfortunate that the training that our staff were given is probably not adhered to at those specific polling stations, because on the other hand, I've seen images, even witnessed at some polling stations today, presiding officers facilitating persons with disabilities. I don't know if those issues were resolved and those persons were able to eventually cast their ballots, but I would hope that that has happened, that whether the presiding officer then sought the guidance of their respective DROs and they were able to properly execute that task, that would be my hope that that has happened. As it relates to the late opening of the polling station, I am happy to report that maybe that was maybe a very small percentage where that may have happened. Again, I am not sure what might have been the issue that contributed to the late opening of the poll. But in relation to the matter that the poll closed at 1:06, that is of concern to us, and I hope that you may be able to help us with that information in relation to that polling station. And this is something that we may have to look at, because legally the poll closes at 6, and every minute counts in relation to that.
Samuel News. Ms. Ward, are there been any major challenges with persons utilizing the polio passport and the polio vote?
We have not recorded any challenges. This is a legal provision in the amendment of the Representation of the People Act that caters now for persons to vote with a valid passport and a valid driver's license. Even outside of any form of identification, a voter, once they're listed on that official list of electors, they can vote without an ID card, without any form of identification, because there is a system in place to identify that voter. And as you rightly mentioned, the provision of the folio, to do that, it is what is the procedure, and I have not received any complaints and should not have any complaints in any voter being able to cast their ballot because they didn't have a form of identification. Of course, an oath of identity is administered to that person before they're allowed to proceed to cast their ballot. I see a question over here.
Hi, the next few months. I see on Facebook tonight some activists posting what appears to be confidential statements over and coming to their full conclusion. What is your appeal to the general public and for in terms of them being credible and open themselves?
Right. We have issued several appeals in relation to this matter. And again, for us at GCOM, I want to remind persons that GCOM is the only authority to release the election results. If you've noticed, we've even stayed away from preliminary results. And so I want to urge persons, and as you've mentioned, political parties, to desist from doing that. We want to ask persons in particular to rely on the tool that is legally provided for by way of GCOM's website to ensure that they follow from that tool and so that they're not misguided by what is published out there. So it is important for persons, particularly the electorate as a whole, to be only guided by what GCOM publishes in relation to any kind of results from these elections.
Hi, good night. Tamika Garnet from the Ghanaian Times. My first question is pertaining to a picture that was circulating of National Cyclist or former National Cyclist Alonzo Greaves posting a picture of his ballot. Would you be, I don't know if that's authentic, so you can confirm whether or not that was actually authentic. And would you say that GCOM did enough to prevent voters from taking their cell phones into the polling station, especially in light of the fact that we saw defiant voters during the discipline services voting, going in with their phones and taking pictures of their ballots? My next question is, we've seen a lot of reports circulating online of persons saying they went to vote, didn't have an ID card and turned away, or they had conflicts with the presiding officers. At least one person was saying that they went to vote but was told that their name was ticked already. I don't know how authentic or not authentic some of these things are, because of course fake news is common. But can you say what is the reporting mechanism or feedback mechanism that GCOM has available to citizens who would have encountered some issues at their polling station? What is the process for them to report to GCOM what happened with them at their polling station, and what is the next step going forward after that? If I say something happened that prevented me as a valid citizen from voting, how can I report this to GCOM, and what is the next step for me?
Thank you, Tamika. As it relates to your first question, again, GCOM does not have the requisite or has not been mandated with investigative capacity. And therefore, as it relates to the ballot circulating on Facebook, while it is alleged that it belonged to a certain person, GCOM does not know that. And therefore, anything as it relates to investigating the origin of that photograph lies in the hands of the police. You've also followed on with that question as it relates to whether GCOM has done enough to put the mechanism into motion as it relates to not allowing persons to enter the polling station with their phones on, off, whatever. I'm sure that as you traverse today, you would have noticed signs at the respective polling stations. And even prior to that, several notices by way of social media or in the newspapers, and even via your coverage as it relates to this matter. I have seen the placement of desks next to voting compartments for persons to leave their phones there. But we've seen, of course, the one issue. What I am happy about is that that issue has not been a widespread issue. And therefore, I believe that the message was clear and persons have really taken the opportunity to follow those procedures that we've placed in line. As it relates to the other question, as it relates to a feedback mechanism, you rightly started off that question as it relates to misinformation and disinformation. And so I will leave it right there to particularly note that we have to be very careful when we receive these reports. And therefore, I'm sure that as citizens, if they have such concerns, then is always willing to listen and hear what those concerns were. But again, we have to be very careful with the level of misinformation and disinformation that are peddled in the public domain. Are there other questions?
But yes, following up on question, would Chico be requesting formally for the police to launch an investigation into these illegal acts of having those ballots photographed, or you're going to make it open for them to make the first jump at the investigation? My second question has to do with the chairman of the Elections Commission. We noticed her statement last night. I don't know if anyone saw her for the day, but could you brief us on her visits, where she was able to visit, her engagement with electors and things like that? I haven't seen her. I don't know about the other reporters, but I haven't seen her. And would she be engaging journalists at this crucial point?
Okay. Can you repeat the first question for me, Sir Gavin?
With regards to the ballots and having those photographed illegally by voters, we've seen that recent court cases today. Would she come formally writing to the police requesting that investigation launch into these illegal acts to have persons prosecuted, or it would be up to the police to launch an investigation?
All right. I can properly respond to the course of action at the next first briefing, because of course I will not want to, I do not know the direction in which the Commission will handle this particular matter. And so until I'm guided by what the next steps are in relation to that, only then I'll be able to say whether GCOM will formally write to the police or whether the police will take the necessary actions on their own.
And the chairman?
So I'm sure that at some point that the chairman will engage the media. Of course, you know that for the purpose of the declaration, that is a mandate that falls under the commission. I've been engaged for the entire day, of course, distributing ballots for intermixing. That's the discipline forces ballots, and therefore I do not have a record as to where the chairman may have visited. I'm sure that she was out and about somewhere, but I'm sure that sometime throughout this period, you may be able to have an engagement.
I'm just following up with the question on the chairman. Answer the question. Could you say where the chairman was?
I'm unable to provide that information.
But you know she was somewhere.
Right.
Okay. My substantive question is, as we come to the end of this press conference here, one, is this the final press conference for today? And as it relates to final results, is it still full as projected?
Okay. I think more likely I should say this is likely to be our final press conference for this evening. As you know, we will have operations continuously ongoing, and therefore we would want to be engaged in those operations. But as I mentioned, the statement of poll gallery is live on our website, and therefore you can follow that gallery online during the course of the evening. But of course, if anything urgent arises, therefore, and we need to address that, it's more than likely that we can have one of this. I do not anticipate anything of that magnitude happening that will require us meeting in this space. But of course, this media center is open on a 24-hour basis, and therefore, you're all welcome to stay, and you're all welcome to follow our website in relation to those SOPs. So, more than likely, our next press conference will be scheduled for sometime tomorrow.
Ms. Ward, you said you were involved in the intermixing of the discipline services today.
Well, the dispatch of.
Your dispatcher, you were also the logistical officer of GD?
No, Mr. Chase.
So is that the work of the logistical officer? Explain to me how that works, please.
Mr. Chase, these ballots are dispatched across the country, and therefore it requires the support of all in our operations to ensure that it is done in a timely and efficient manner, of course in the presence of political party agents and on the police escort, to ensure that we cover all the gazetted polling stations where those ballots were expected to be intermixed.
So here I come in. First, able to find those missing discipline services ballots today. That's one. Two, spoke to the young lady on the other side of the room about the statements of poll being available on social media. But there's nothing that Jacob can do because those are posted, and if he take them and posted, if an illegal act, I am aware. Would you say whether or not that has changed? And of course, the results we were told yesterday should be available on the poll, and you did not definitively answer that a short part of the remarks. So I'm asking you about that.
Julia, you're really trying to pin me down on that, and I don't want to be very malicious at this point in a very sensitive to say that the law permits us 50 days. But of course, as always, we understand the anxiety, and we've committed to delivering those results within the shortest possible time. And of course, taking into account all the legal provisions that are in place. When I say legal provisions, as it relates to the request for recounts, if there are requests for recounts and we have to facilitate those recounts, then it means it may shift those anticipated timeline. But of course, we want to ensure that this process concludes within the shortest time possible. Julia, as it relates to your question, as it relates to the statement of poll, I know when the young lady asked a question, she was particularly referring to a particular statement of poll. And I've just received a statement from the Chief Election Officer in relation to that particular statement of poll. And so, while it will be shared with this statement, will be shared with you after this press conference, I will take the liberty of reading this statement. It says, GCOM rejects the publication of fake statement of poll. The Guyana Elections Commission has noted the publication of poll at 1 minute past the scheduled close of poll. GCOM wishes to make it abundantly clear that it is impossible for the counting of the ballots at any polling station to have commenced. This despicable act can be seen as creating a platform on which the political party associated with Team Mohammed's Facebook page can create the impression that it has been successful at the polls. GCOM takes the opportunity once again to appeal to all stakeholders to accept only the results of the elections that are posted on GCOM's website in the form of statements of poll. 2, the official declarations made by supernumerary returning officers and returning officers for the district and sub-districts respectively, and the national results to be declared by GCOM. The publication of fake results will be put to the Guyana Police Force for investigation. I will share this statement with you after this briefing.
Thank you, but you didn't answer the question on the discipline services balance.
Sure. Thanks for the reminder, Julia. And again, I am not sure at the time of this press briefing what is happening operationally. Those ballots will either be detected during the process of the count, and so there is a system in place already to ensure that as soon as it is detected, that it arrives in the respective region to ensure that it is counted in that particular district. So that process, I'm sure, as it unfolds during the count, that we will be able to identify those ballots.
Ms. Moore, can you say what is the procedure from the time of the application received the poll to uploading? What is through the process for GCOM, that is?
Right. So, deputy returning officers, they are responsible for clusters of polling stations. And so, once they respective packages from the respective polling station, the office of the supernumerary return officer for the respective, or the returning officer for the respective district. Thereafter, the process will commence for the uploading of all those SOPs to the GCOM website. And once all the SOPs have been uploaded, it is only at that point the tabulation process will commence.
Do you know when the first SOPs will be uploaded based on what you just said?
I'm unable to tell you that. That is an operation that is ongoing in the field, and I will not have that information here at this point.
But what about for the least populated areas? Would it be easier for these to be done in a timely manner rather than compared to the densely populated areas.
Right. So it may not always be about the population, but it has to also do with the terrain. And so while the population in a particular area may be very small, we also have to consider the terrain. And so again, those are other factors that we should also consider. What I can say to you then is our will be working around the clock. There's no stop. And therefore, sometime throughout tonight, I'm sure you can expect SOPs being uploaded to that portal.
Oh,
With regards to the missing, the ballots that have not been accounted for, if those ballots are discovered tonight, we are, would the DCO be in a position to transport them to the respective regions?
It must be done.
Or
It must be done.
Pertaining to my earlier question about the mechanism for feedback, if a person, a citizen has a grievance or a question or a concern about what happened to them, I don't think I clearly understand how the voter is supposed to contact you. Is there a hotline? Is there a section on the website? Where do I go as a voter who was aggrieved in my voting process? Where do I go at GCOM to lodge my report?
So we have the various layers, the supernumerary returning officers, chief election officer. So either of those persons can ensure that. Again, Tamika, when you asked that question, was with that note of misinformation. That was indeed the case, and those persons were able to cast their ballots today.
my final question has to do with, I think that DCO is listening to this first conference, if he's the person responding to the fake SOP. Now, why was it that he quickly responded to that and said that GCOM was that police should be launched into those fake SOPs? And having the same level of commitment come from GCOM with regards to investigating those persons who allegedly photographed their ballots. When this is something that happened first, or when the members of the legislative forces went and happened again today, why not that same level of commitment to having these issues investigated?
Thank you for your final question, Svetlana. And again, it's not the DCO, that was a statement from GCOM. And so you placed him in a difficult spot to respond to that particular question from GCOM. But I'm sure that it is something that tomorrow, at our next press briefing, we can further interrogate. So since that was Svetlana's final question, I don't see any other questions or hands raised. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, first of all, I would like to take the opportunity as GCOM's Public Relations Officer to thank you for your cooperation and support in the fields today. You've been wonderful in your coverage, and I look forward to the same kind of support as we continue to cover these elections to the point of a declaration. It would also be very remiss of me to conclude this press briefing this evening, not to, on behalf of the Commission, the CEO, and our entire operations team, to congratulate the people of Guyana who participated in this democratic process for being part of this very important exercise and a good day that we had in the voting process. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you more at this media center as we continue to engage over the coming days. Thank you very much, and have a pleasant evening.
with our Guyana's election coverage right here in the conversation. Yours truly, Malachi Kwesi Gilbert, with my co-host Martin Al-Ameen. So, Martin, just like we had pointed out in the initial discussion, um, just before we went for that break, and then the press conference came on. A lot of the stuff that is being propagated online is definitely false narratives, false information, misinformation, which I know the GCOM spokesperson was able to clarify a lot more of what the particulars were. So we encourage those people who really want to have the benefit of the doubt. So go to the GCOM website. It's gcom.org.gy/public/home. Go to that particular web page and follow on from there. You've been also just allowing the audience to read some of the information. What was that all about?
Yes. So that is pretty much the info from the different polling stations that is yet to come in. And I'll pull it up back. That way they have a understanding
Yeah.
of what we're talking about.
Right.
Right. So as we're seeing on social media, the different information that they're propagating that's supposed to be real, as you're seeing here, direct from the Guyana Elections website, right? This is
Yeah.
the poll image gallery the young lady would have speaking about in the press conference. And it is showing that no SOPs is yet available for this district. And the same goes for all the other districts, as we see from District 1 to 10, right?
Right. Well,
No
just
SOPs
to
is yet
kind of
available. I mean, we're
none.
just, 2 hours and a half into, gathering all the information, securing all
Yeah,
the
and
ballot box.
and just
I'm pretty sure
just kind of just
the
to kind of
observers had
confirm.
to went on a. Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, just to confirm what you're saying is factual. I just
Mhm.
did a run through two polling areas, and I can clearly see that the polls are closed. All the scrutinizers, the observers, everybody is locked um,
Correct.
in that space. Nobody has left. This is going to be an ongoing process, like I said, until morning, the counts and all that. So nobody has gone anywhere, um, and there's no release of information, which clearly has to come from the Guyana Elections Commission, GCOM. So for those persons who are
Hmm.
trying to stoke some sort of thing on social media, I see iNews has a story out already, um, calling the SOPs that are being posted online as full fakes. And we also
I
spoke
mean,
about that.
of
We
course.
made it clear that these things have to be fake because the polls closed at 6, and there was no way at 7:28 in Guyana they would have already counted the ballots from the boxes and had the statements of poll. So we really have to be realistic as Guyanese and stop allowing mischievous individuals to, you know,
Hmm.
discredit the system that is out there to really ensure that we see the results of today's general and regional elections, and we see them proper, not just
Yeah.
from somebody trying to create something. And you
Yes.
don't even
Yes.
know what they're really trying to create out of that, really. It's just mischievous, just very mischievous people, you know?
Well, I think it's easy to tell exactly what they're trying to create based on what the GCOM spokesperson would have said.
Yeah,
Information, and we rightfully mentioned even before she would have said that we're waiting
yeah,
to see the information from the GCOM's website directly. And
correct.
as while we were speaking on it, this bit of statements of poll image gallery wasn't available. But the moment the press conference started, this page was directly readily available. And here we have, you could go through and see it for yourself on the Guyana Elections Commission website, right?
Yeah.
As Malachi mentioned, gcom.org.gy,
Mm-hmm.
right? You could go check it
Yep.
out for yourself as I'm showing you guys here live and direct. No
From the
SOPs is yet available, and
yeah.
the time is 8:42, right? So the
Basically,
only
elections just
information
done.
here, correct. I mean, the people ain't even tackle dinner properly yet. I ain't even tackle
And
dinner properly yet. Me tea still in the
yeah, I mean,
microwave.
yeah. We gotta get our, I mean, our dinner and all of that, and of course come
Yeah.
right back and keep the updates flowing as we see them happening on the ground in Guyana. Make sure you follow us on social media as well. Stay glued to
Hmm.
the conversation. We're gonna be back a little later on after we wrap up this particular segment of the conversation for this evening. But yeah, a lot of this misinformation, and there's even one propagating from a so-called activist who's saying that our Boys Town Nursery School, and there's an SOP, well, which is supposed to be an SOP. Obviously, it's a false
Declaration.
SOP. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a false narrative these individuals are trying to push on on the Guyanese public. But I don't think it's going to work this time around. A lot of people know that people want to incite stuff. They want to, um, for whatever reason, to create chaos. But I don't think it's going to work.
No,
I
man,
don't
there's
think it's going to
nobody
work this
running
time.
away with flash drives this time around, locking off their personal computers. No
Yeah.
corruption. We don't see readily any political party leader gathering at the headquarters as yet. We still got
Mhm.
time. Allow the people to do their due process. It is
True.
a free and fair democracy we're seeing take place as we speak. So let the thing work
Yeah.
out.
Free and
As the
yeah.
information come, we'll bring it to you guys, of course. But it have to
Yeah.
go through that
Yeah.
free
So
and fair process.
yeah, just about 15 minutes to the top of the hour. Just before we wrap up this particular segment, just want to give you a little recap of today's proceedings. It kicked off very early in the morning at 6 o'clock this morning. Polls were open. We
Yes.
managed to witness just before 6, way before 6, around 5 something, the presiding officers, the ballot boxes, the security services, everything was being put in place. Um, Especially along the Mandela Avenue Road. That would be the back school and the multilateral school that was being put in place, as well as in Tocqueville and in other areas, as well as in your area, Martin, Turkine.
Yes.
Um, we heard early. We brought you the report with uh, the presidential candidate for APNU voting in Plaisance. He inked his finger very early in the morning. Then we had the presidential candidate of the We Invest in Guyana party, WIN. They Azuddin Mohammed also cast his vote in the Eccles area. Then we had Nigel Hughes, who cast his vote in the Providence area. He's also the presidential candidate for the AFC. Then we had President Ali, the incumbent, coming in also to ink his finger. We also had Amanza Walter Nazir from her party inking her finger. We have not, again, been able to get any information on Simona Brooms from the ALP.
I
Of
think
course, we're going to be trying to.
they,
Go ahead.
I think it's fair to say she would have inked her finger also and did her part, played, in this election, because I did see a somewhat of a live video on her page,
Yeah.
but it's not saying
Okay.
much of anything, compared to the rest of the information that we're seeing from every other party taking part. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but I think it's fair to say that she did vote, she did take part. You know, we're not seeing the regular image, the posting like everybody else. I mean, every party does their own their functions differently, but I would have
Mm-hmm.
expect something coming from the in-house campaign managers or whatever the case may be. You know,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
on
We expect
personal
to see
page
some
directly
movement.
saying something.
Yeah. Well, we hope every single party the best, especially the smaller parties who are, vying to get the get notice from the population of Guyana. Good luck to them. So we saw that chain of events happening from morning until a little later on in the day when it was pretty hot. It was 90 degrees a little earlier. Um, it's now 83 degrees in the capital city. It's a little cooler in the evening. We're going to be back and forth with you, giving you those updates throughout the rest of the night into the morning on, what's happening with the developments with the general and regional elections. Again, all sources of information has to come from the source itself, which would be GCOM. If you're wondering what that website is, you can check the website on GCOM. That's GECOM, lowercase, all of them, .org.gy. So go on the website and have a look. And like Martin was showing earlier, the GCOM has not received SOPs. So for those people who are trying to create mischief, and uploading some fake things on there they're calling SOPs, which I mean, I can tell just by looking at them, they're utter nonsense. But
Yeah,
for the
man. Yeah,
layman,
man.
yeah, the layman who does not understand the electoral process or the intricacies of that electoral process, they may be carried away or may be influenced. So we're going to dispel that influence. And of course, again, get your information directly from the source, the Ghana Elections Commission. Check their website. That's gcom.org.gy. Stay glued to the conversation with us. We're going to be, giving you those updates. We call it Election Coverage 2025. We're going to be back with you a little later on this evening to continue giving you more information and, of course, more updates. I got to say a big good evening to the guys in South Rhineville, in Tugville, in many of these areas where, people are just um, it is as though there's a celebration happening because, Tugville area, people are, having a drink. A lot of people are congregating in little pockets, having discussions about today's elections, stuff like that. Um, but let's try to keep it as civil as possible. 10 minutes to 9 in Guyana. So we'll be back with you at around 10 to give you some more in about the next hour, now hour 10 minutes to give you some more updates on, the election coverage right here in Guyana. Stay glued to the conversation. You know how we do it.